The iron gates of Cypress Ridge Estates should have opened the moment I pressed my remote. Instead, they stayed locked while Victoria Hartwell stood blocking my path like a human roadblock. At 55, she carried herself like someone who'd never been told no in her life. Perfectly pressed red blazer, silver hair styled into corporate armor, and a clipboard she wielded like a weapon. "I'm sorry, but residents must be pre-approved before entry," she announced through my BMW window. "This is a private community with strict security protocols." I held up the deed I'd signed 3 hours earlier. "Ma'am, I just purchased 47 Magnolia Court. This is my home." Her eyes swept over me. 6 feet 2 inches, black, wearing a simple polo and jeans. Her smile turned arctic. "I'm sure there's been some mistake. Our residents go through an extensive background verification process. Perhaps you're looking for Riverside Gardens? That's more suitable for people in your situation." Behind her, 2 security guards in cheap uniforms flanked the gate like backup dancers. What Victoria didn't know was that I was Colonel James Washington, just retired from 20 years in Marine Special Operations. And the situation she was referring to was about to become her worst nightmare. "Ms. Hartwell," I said, reading her name tag, "I suggest you step aside. I'm coming through that gate one way or another." She laughed. "Are you threatening me? Security." I smiled calmly and pulled out my phone. "No, ma'am. I'm making a phone call." Before we dive deeper, drop a comment with where you're watching from. This story shows why you should never judge someone by how they look. What Victoria didn't realize was that buying this $3 million mansion wasn't just a retirement dream. It was a test. For months, I've been hearing stories from other military families about discrimination in upscale neighborhoods. Families denied entry, applications mysteriously lost, and HOA boards that operated like country clubs from the 1950s. So I decided to document everything. Hidden cameras in my car, audio recording on my phone, and a complete paper trail of my purchase. I wasn't just buying a house. I was building a federal civil rights case. The phone call I made wasn't to a lawyer. It was to Staff Sergeant Mike Rodriguez, my former Delta Force teammate who now ran security consulting. "Mike, it's happening exactly like we predicted. I need the team here. Full documentation protocol." Within minutes, Mike texted back, "ETA 0600 hours. Package is en route." Victoria had no idea she'd just committed a federal crime on camera, in front of witnesses, with a decorated Marine colonel who specialized in intelligence gathering. Her security protocols were about to meet actual security professionals. That night, I checked into the Marriott 5 miles away and reviewed the footage. Victoria's words were crystal clear. "More suitable for people in your situation." In federal court, that phrase would be Exhibit A in a housing discrimination lawsuit. But the real shock came when I ran a background check on Victoria herself. She wasn't just some random HOA president. She was Victoria Hartwell Manning, wife of a city councilman, sister-in-law to the county sheriff, and daughter of a federal judge. Her family connections had made her untouchable for years. Until now. At 0600 hours sharp, 3 black SUVs rolled up to the Cypress Ridge gates. Victoria was already there with her security team, probably expecting me to return with lawyers and paperwork. Instead, she got something she'd never seen before. 8 men and women stepped out in perfect formation. Not in uniform, they were all civilians now, but carrying themselves with the unmistakable bearing of elite special operations. Mike Rodriguez led the group, followed by Sarah Chun, former Navy SEAL intelligence, Marcus Thompson, ex-Air Force pararescue, and 5 others who'd served in the most classified units America had to offer. They weren't armed with weapons. They were armed with something more dangerous. Cameras, legal documents, and 20 years of experience dealing with hostile situations. Victoria's confidence evaporated the moment she saw them. What is this? Mike stepped forward, his voice calm but commanding. "Ma'am, I'm Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, representing Colonel Washington. We're here to document a federal civil rights violation and ensure our brother gains access to his legally purchased property." "Colonel?" Victoria stammered, the color draining from her face. That's when I stepped out of the lead vehicle in my dress blue uniform, complete with decorations from Iraq, Afghanistan, and classified operations I couldn't discuss. The sight of a Marine colonel in full military dress made even Victoria's security guards step back. 20 years defending this country, I announced loud enough for the gathering crowd of neighbors to hear. 2 Purple Hearts, a Bronze Star, and a Medal of Honor. And yesterday, I was told I'm not suitable for this neighborhood. The gates were now lined with residents holding phones, recording everything. Victoria's private community had become a very public spectacle. Victoria tried to recover, pulling out her clipboard like a shield. "Colonel Washington, if you just followed proper procedures." "I did," Sarah Chun interrupted, stepping forward with a thick folder. "Federal Fair Housing Act requires equal treatment regardless of race. You violated that law yesterday at 15:47 hours. She opened the folder, revealing frame-by-frame screenshots of Victoria's discriminatory statements. Marcus added, "We've also identified a pattern. In 5 years, this community has admitted 0 black families, despite 23 applications. That's not coincidence. That's systematic discrimination." Victoria's clipboard trembled in her hands. "You can't prove anything." I smiled and held up my phone. "Actually, we can. Would you like to hear your exact words about finding me more suitable housing?" The crowd of neighbors pressed closer. Some looked shocked, others embarrassed. One elderly resident called out, "Victoria, is this true? Did you really say that?" But the real surprise came when a white sedan pulled up behind our convoy. Out stepped Agent Jennifer Walsh from the FBI's Civil Rights Division, followed by 2 U.S. Marshals. "Ms. Hartwell," Agent Walsh announced, "you're under federal investigation for violation of the Fair Housing Act. We'll need to speak with you immediately." Victoria's face went white as the mansion behind her. Her hands shook as she realized her family connections wouldn't protect her from federal charges. The next 2 hours were a masterclass in how federal law enforcement handles civil rights violations. Agent Walsh interviewed Victoria while the marshals secured documents. My Delta Force team provided technical support, their expertise in intelligence gathering proving invaluable in a civilian context. Victoria tried every excuse in the book. I was protecting property values. I didn't know he was military. I was following HOA guidelines. None of it mattered. The evidence was overwhelming. Discriminatory statements on camera, a 5-year pattern of racial exclusion, and violation of federal housing law with multiple witnesses. But the most devastating moment came when Agent Walsh revealed the scope of the investigation. "Ms. Hartwell, we've been monitoring Cypress Ridge Estates for 18 months following multiple complaints. Colonel Washington's case is just the most recent in a pattern of systematic discrimination. The FBI had been building a federal case against the entire HOA structure. My documentation wasn't just evidence. It was the final piece of a much larger puzzle." Victoria's world collapsed when Agent Walsh announced, "You're being charged with conspiracy to violate civil rights under color of authority, a federal felony carrying up to 10 years in prison." The neighbors who'd been recording fell silent. Many started walking away, suddenly unwilling to be associated with Victoria's actions. 3 months later, I was finally moving into 47 Magnolia Court, not as a controversial new resident, but as the federally protected owner of property that was rightfully mine. Victoria had been convicted on all charges, sentenced to 3 years in federal prison, and banned from serving on any HOA board for life. The entire Cypress Ridge HOA board was replaced through emergency elections. The new leadership implemented strict anti-discrimination policies and invited a civil rights training program for all residents. My first neighborhood barbecue was attended by 40 families, including several who admitted they'd been too afraid to speak up during Victoria's reign of discrimination. The Delta Force team that had backed me up became regular guests, their presence a reminder that respect isn't negotiable. The most satisfying moment came when the new HOA president, Mrs. Anderson, a retired teacher who happened to be black, handed me the ceremonial key to the community. "Colonel Washington, welcome home. Thank you for making this place worthy of heroes like you." But the real victory wasn't personal. Victoria's conviction became federal precedent for prosecuting HOA discrimination. Within a year, similar cases were being filed across the country, with prosecutors citing United States v. Hartwell as the blueprint for civil rights enforcement in residential communities. Victoria Hartwell thought her family connections and position of authority made her untouchable. She learned that federal civil rights law doesn't recognize local privilege, and discrimination is a crime regardless of who commits it. Today, Cypress Ridge Estates is a model of inclusive community living. The gates that once kept people out based on race now welcome families based on one criterion: their ability to contribute positively to neighborhood life. The most beautiful irony? The security system Victoria claimed to be protecting was actually strengthened by diversity. When your neighbors include Delta Force operators, Navy SEALs, and other military professionals, your community becomes genuinely safer, not just for people who look like you, but for everyone. If you face housing discrimination, document everything, know your rights, and don't hesitate to contact federal authorities. Sometimes, the person being denied entry has exactly the resources needed to tear down barriers for everyone. What would you have done in my situation? Share your thoughts below, and if this story inspired you, subscribe for more tales where justice doesn't just win, it transforms entire communities. Because sometimes the most powerful weapon against prejudice isn't force, it's the law, backed by people who swore an oath to defend it.